Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast, reacting to week 2 of the Giants season. Really thought I was going to come on here and talk about a win today. It felt like it. Of course, the Giants took a 3-point lead late in the fourth quarter. 33 seconds left. I thought there was like a minute left. 33 seconds left. They take a 3-point lead. Of course, Dallas comes down against that just amazing Shane Bowen defense, which I talked about him last week. I was like, I don't know what the guy does well. And without the Giants scoring 37 offensive points in this game, we would be just left ranting about Shane Bowen's defense yet again. But luckily, the offense showed up. Unfortunately, it turned into a crushing loss, which, of course, you knew Brandon Aubrey from 64 yards. He was going to make that. You just knew it. That happens to the Giants all the time. I feel like aside from that one Randy Bullock field goal in the Titans game, week 1 of 2022, it feels like every game-winning or game-tying field goal late against the Giants always tends to go in. Does not matter the situation. That was like one time I can remember it went in the Giants' way. And of course, late in the game, as time expired, Brandon Aubrey, 46-yard game winner. Giants fall to 0-2. Dallas gets back to 1-1. And right now the Giants are slated to face an 0-2 Kansas City Chiefs team next week, where they are 6-point underdogs. So a lot to talk about, and I would say it's probably the most, I don't know if it's the most exciting Giants game since this long ago, but it had some similarities to the game at the New Orleans Saints back in 2015 when the score was like, 57-54, that crazy game. It kind of felt like that because it was so high scoring. I mean, the Giants have played in very intense games since that point, but I think just with the score being so high and 41 points being scored total in the fourth quarter, it just felt a lot like that game. So I could be wrong, but that's what it reminded me of. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy. Leave a like, subscribe, all that, and let's get into it. As always, we'll start with the offense. I mean, look, 37 points. You should win those games every single time. It just sucks that you score that many and it ends in a loss. But the Giants did have 506 total offensive yards, 7.8 yards per play, which I think last week it was like 3 point something. It was awful. It might have been like 2 point something. So such a better offensive performance compared to last week. But you're playing Dallas, who obviously they traded their best defensive player. They're not the best defense, of course. But still, I don't care who you're playing. 37 points is freaking phenomenal. The way this game started out was so weird. I don't want to go drive by drive just yet, but with the whole James Hudson thing, it was just so odd. I mean, the guy literally had a graphic. I've been watching football religiously for probably over 15 years now. I have never seen a graphic made for an offensive lineman about how many penalties he has on a single drive. And I think there was some crazy stat about James Hudson. He's the first player in this century to have 4 penalties on one drive. So James Hudson, of course, filling in for Andrew Thomas, who once again, we kind of got jerked around throughout the week, like, oh, maybe Thomas will play, maybe not. Turns out he's doubtful, ends up not playing. James Hudson starts, and just from the first drive, I mean, it was terrible. He kept leaving early. He had a stupid, unnecessary roughness penalty, I believe it was, and ends up getting benched for Marcus Bowe, which I don't know why they didn't do it last week. I came on here and talked about the game, the week 1 game, and I was saying, like, why not play Marcus Bowe at left tackle? I understand he's kind of raw, he's new, 5th-round pick, I get all that, but based on what you saw in the preseason, I know he looked much better in the first game as compared to the rest of the preseason, but the guy showed you he can play. I was not concerned about throwing Marcus Bowe out there and him looking like total garbage. I did not think that was going to happen. And the guy actually played really well. Like, I don't know why the coaching staff was so set on James Hudson playing left tackle from like the start. I just don't understand that. So Marcus Bowe comes in, plays much better. We don't really see James Hudson the rest of the game, I believe. Maybe he played special teams or something, but at least for left tackle, that was Marcus Bowe, and he looked really good. So that's a positive out of this game. But we'll start with Russell Wilson. Russ was 30 of 41, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns, the one awful interception where I just really think he was trying to make something happen, and he just should not have made something happen. It was a bad idea. Rushing wise, Russ had 23 rushing yards on 3 attempts, had a 15-yard long run. We saw more Cam Skattebo, which I feel like a lot of things I was asking for in the last reaction was kind of happening. Like, we got Marcus Bowe, we got more rushing attempts out of Cam Skattebo, we got well, we didn't get anything out of Shane Bowen. That was a thing I was harping on last video, but it was nice to see Cam Scatterbo get more acclimated. He got 11 carries, 45 yards, his first career touchdown. That came right after a 24-yard run where they put Jackson Dart in the game. I thought the Giants got a little bit cute with the Jackson Dart plays towards the end of the game. I don't know why they saved it for the end. And even the announcers during the game were questioning what Brian Daboll was doing there. So I don't mind putting Jackson Dart out there for specific packages, and it was a lot of weird formations. It would be like Jackson Dart, he would be standing in shotgun with like two tight ends next to him, a running back behind him. I don't know what they call that formation, but a lot of weird looking stuff. And they ran that same formation with Russ they showed early in the game. He kept it, ran for like a 5-yard gain. Then of course we had the Scatterbo 24-yard run. So it was effective to a degree. But then of course you had the Giants run the play with Jackson Dart. I think it might have been Dart's last play of the game, and he tried to keep it, and he slipped and lost 3 yards. So I wasn't like a big fan of the whole Jackson Dart mixing in so much thing. I thought they kind of overdid it a couple more times than they should have, but whatever. At least we saw Cam Scatterbo play more, 4.1 yards per carry. Tyrone Tracy, definitely noticeable on kick returns, but not too noticeable as a runner. I feel like receiving-wise, he did some good things, but Tyrone Tracy, only 5 carries, 15 yards. Devin Singletary, only 1 carry for 4 yards. Receiving-wise, of course, Malik Nabers and Wan'Dale Robinson combined for a crap ton of yards, whatever 167 plus 142 is. That would be 309 yards just for 2 wide receivers. Wow. So that was pretty impressive. So obviously a career high for Wan'Dale Robinson. And it's funny because Wan'Dale Robinson, I've said this myself, so I can't say, well, people have said. No, I've said it myself too. Like, people make fun of Wan'Dale Robinson and his, like, his season total from last year of like, what do you have? Like 90 catches and under 600 yards or something crazy. Like, the point is the guy catches a lot of passes but ends up going nowhere most times. This game, though, he did have 14.2 yards per target. Like, that is very impressive. It has to be a career high. Of course, the yards were a career high. 8 catches, 142 yards on 10 targets, had that long touchdown. I think it might have been a 4th down play. I forget. I'll look back at my notes. But Malik Nabers, of course, 13 targets, 9 receptions, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. The first touchdown was crazy. I don't know how he held on to it. It actually kind of reminded me of the Dez Bryant one from, like, I think it was 2013. It was the game when Dez Bryant's hand fell out of bounds and the Giants like barely won that game because of that. It was a similar looking catch. Of course, he wasn't as far back in the end zone, but a similar catch. And just all of his weight's falling on like the ball. You're asking yourself, how the hell does he hang on to that? But he did. So a great catch by Nabers. And of course, later in the game, the deep ball from Russ, and the Giants go up by 3. And on that play, I think Kyer Elam, the cornerback on Dallas, had his hand right in front of Malik Nabers' visor. And like, I don't know how he saw it. It kind of looked like he just put his arms out and the ball perfectly fell in the bucket, which is when Russell Wilson throws a great deep ball, that's what it looks like. So somehow that worked. He had 2 touchdowns. It just sucks that performance, I should say those performances from these 2 guys went to waste. I mean, Wan'Dale and Nabers were phenomenal. Nobody else did that much. Darius Slayton had 61 yards on 2 catches. Theo Johnson had a couple nice catches over the middle. He was 4 for 34 on the day. Tyrone Tracy, I mentioned, 4 catches, 38 yards, much more effective as a receiver. Cam Scatterbo, 2 catches, 14 yards. Did have that, I don't know if you want to call it a drop on the 4th down play early in the game. I was really hoping they would go for a field goal there. I just thought, I guess with the final score being what it was, it made sense to go for it. But just given where they were in the game at that point, it might have been 3-0 or something. I was like, just take the points. But they did not take the points. But I also don't want to call it a drop because Cam Scatterbo was hit right away as he was about to receive the pass. So I don't want to say he dropped it, but it was a tough catch. And offensive line-wise, I mean, it looked pretty good early. I don't think the running lanes were that great. Like, I would say they were better in pass blocking just based on watching it from the broadcast view. But Russell Wilson was sacked 3 times, but I feel like, especially early in the game, he was given some really good pockets. And there was a stat, I don't know if it was true, I think it might have been Justin Pennick who said this. I'll go look real quick. Oh, so Justin tweeted, I think he's right about this too, because people in the comments are confirming it, but Justin tweeted, did the Fox broadcast just say Russell Wilson's 153 yards in the first quarter was the most in his career? Turns out it was true. So Russell Wilson just right from the jump was just passing the ball all over the yard, looked great. The Giants were putting up points. And once again, just sucks from an offensive perspective that they could not win this game. I feel like the offensive side of the ball did their job. Were there too many dumb penalties? Absolutely. Like James Hudson, 4-on-1 drive, that's awful. But then again, I feel like they had more defensive penalties as compared to offensive penalties. I'm sure there's a way to look that up. So anyway, going to the defensive side of the ball now, of course, Dallas, 40 points. That's unacceptable. And what I was saying last week, reacting to that Washington game, was like, what does Shane Bowen really give you? What's his identity? What does he bring to this team? And I still don't see it. It's just too much of sit back and zone. I think the Cowboys had another second and very long in this game that got converted, and that was a big issue last week because we saw against the Commanders, they would have a 2nd and 17, a 3rd and whatever, 3rd and 21, and they would convert it, it felt like every single time, except for that one time they made them punt, but it felt like every single time it was a 2nd or 3rd down and long, which I went over in that reaction, so I forget the exact situations, but it was awful. Most times they should have gotten off the field, they would allow these big gains from, to Washington, and they would get a first down. And that wasn't as much of an issue in this game because a lot of Dallas's conversions were pretty, not simple, but just manageable situations, like a 3rd and 5, a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 7. It wasn't like they were 3rd and 18 like last week, so that part is a bit better. But when you have 160 penalty yards and 14 total penalties, it's tough to win those games. I mean, the Giants at least finally got a turnover, which was nice to see. They should have probably had multiple. There was the one where I think it was Nubin and Okereke. They were kind of fighting over an interception, and then the ball, of course, hit the ground, so that sucked. But it was Drew Phillips who got an interception in this game. That was great to see. So for this team that it took them like 11 weeks last year to get their first turnover, or maybe it was first interception, I forget, one or the other. But to get that in week 2 this year, just get that out of the way, that feels good. So at least I got a turnover. But we did see way more bad than good when it came to the defensive side of the ball. I mentioned Drew Phillips. He had his up and down moments in this game, but I would say overall he played really well. He had some big tackles for loss. He had the interception. He had some big pass breakups. He had that one on Jalen Tolbert late in the game when he tried to run that out route and he made like a tackle on the flat by himself. That was big. Paulson Adebo had 11 solo tackles, but I don't really think that tells you he played a good game. I don't really think Adebo was that great. And he actually got saved by, I think it was... Who was it? It was George Pickens, who I think had an offensive pass interference. But Adebo missed a tackle on Jalen Tolbert, I think, late in the 4th quarter, which would have been a massive play, a massive game-changing play. And luckily for Paulson Adebo, it got wiped out by the offensive pass interference on the other side of the field. The pass rush, it looked pretty good today. I think there were moments it looked dominant, and then sometimes where Dak had too much time to throw. So I would say up and down performance, but we did get a sack out of Kayvon, a sack out of Brian Burns pretty early. I didn't see too much of Abdul Carter. I think he might have made a big play at one point, but Abdul Carter also missed that tackle late in the game when Javonte Williams had that big run on 2nd and 27 or something. So he had a bad moment, but I would say even Dexter Lawrence, he didn't make much noise last week. I didn't see a whole lot today. I think Lawrence looked better this week as compared to last week, but still not much. I mean, Elijah Garcia, of all people, had a big sack in this game. That was good to see. And we did see some nice tackles for loss in this game. I think there was a big Deonte Banks tackle for loss. I'm trying to see if his name was in here. Brian Burns had 2 tackles for loss. Kayvon had 1. Drew Phillips had 1. Tyler Nubin had 1. Garcia had 1. Maybe not. I'm trying to see. I thought that Deonte Banks had 1, but I guess not. I wanted to see the snap counts because I feel like Cordell Flott didn't play too much. He played 59 out of 83 snaps, which is not too bad, I guess, and I wanted to see where Deonte Banks was. Deonte Banks had less. He played 33 snaps as compared to Cordell Flott's 59. I feel like Flott didn't play that much of a pivotal role in this game, like his name didn't pop up too often. And for those of us on Abdul Carter snap watch, he played 67 out of 83 snaps, so I think that's a better percentage than what we saw last week. And for a guy as good as he is, I think he should be playing more times than not. Although I'm looking now, Cordell Flott was given a 76 PFF grade, which is pretty solid, so if you count that, it's an initial grade, so it's not like final, but I guess that is pretty good. Anyway, let's go over specifics now because I do want to go over the game in depth because I feel like that was just a summary. I forgot to mention this, but yeah, Darius Slayton also had a holding call that called back a pretty big run play early in the game. James Hudson, same thing. Wan'Dale Robinson had a near catch on 3rd down. I believe it was challenged, but it was ruled incomplete. Russell Wilson flat out missed the throw. I think Wan'Dale kind of sat down in zone. He was pretty open. He was probably 15 yards or so down the field, so it's not the easiest of throws, but a throw that should have been made. Then they had that big completion to Wan'Dale Robinson, which would have set the Giants up at the 2-yard line. Yeah, it was a 50-yard gain from the Giants' 48, so they should have been down at the 2. There was an unnecessary roughness call that was on James Hudson. So, of course, that went from the 2-yard line back to the 17-yard line. The Giants eventually had to settle for 3 points. And that right there is just an example of you get at the 2, you should be going in for 7. And instead, because of a stupid mental error, you end up with only 3 points. And I don't want to completely crap on Brian Daboll, but you can just tell the team is not well coached. There's just no discipline. I can't say Dallas was much better either with that, but still, that's a first-year head coach for them. The Giants have had Daboll now for, 4 years? And you're still out here giving up 160 yards in penalty yardage? I mean, it's ridiculous. There was a nice Cordell Flott pass breakup on a Jake Ferguson out route, so I forgot about that one. That was a nice Cordell Flott play. Dallas was going to go for a quarterback sneak, and they would have got it, but then there was a delay of game called, so they had to punt. There was a sack on Dak Prescott early. It was Brian Burns, but then Dexter Lawrence also had some interior pressure, so I want to give him a shout out for that too. Kayvon Thibodeau had a big sack on a 3rd down to force a field goal. The Giants got kind of lucky because the play before that sack happened, that was the play he really underthrew George Pickens on the left side, which I think if it was a good throw, it would have been a touchdown. So not sure why he put so much air on it, but it gave the cornerback, I forget who it was, enough time to catch up. So a better throw there, and Dallas probably has a touchdown, but luckily ends in a field goal instead. Neighbors had the 29-yard touchdown, the very tough catch where he survives the ground on Trayvon Diggs, who had a very rough afternoon in this game. Drew Phillips had a dumb penalty for slamming CeeDee Lamb into the ground. I think those two have a bit of beef going. Not exactly sure why. I think they said it was something dating back to last year. Not sure exactly what it was. Javon Holland had a near interception in the back of the end zone. It went through his hands. Incomplete pass to George Pickens. There was a 3rd and goal. Roy Robertson Harris roughing the passer call, which I kind of thought was bullcrap at first, but then after the replay, it's all right, he did hit him near the helmet. That is a rule. I don't like the rule, but it is a rule. So rules are rules, but I don't know, just another undisciplined play. Then you have the Deonte Banks and CeeDee Lamb getting offsetting penalties for taunting. I don't know, CeeDee Lamb was doing that weird pointing thing, and I don't know what the hell was going on there. It was a weird thing. Kevontae Turpin had a touchdown that drive, but Roy Robertson Harris was offsides anyway, so it would not have mattered, but that was 2 penalties on Roy Robertson Harris in that same drive. The Giants got lucky here, so there was the near interception by Nubin. I talked about that earlier, but Dallas ran out of time right before halftime. I forget who made a catch, but someone right before halftime made a catch. Oh, it was Jake Ferguson. He got pushed out of bounds by Cordell Flott, but he was going backwards, so the ref kept winding the clock, and I think they eventually ran out of time. They tried to get another play off, and nobody was set, so they called the penalty, and that was the half. So the Giants kind of got lucky there. So the Giants come out of halftime. They get the Drew Phillips interception, big play over the middle. Then it was 4th and 2 on the Dallas 9. The Giants had the ball, 4th and 2. I wanted them to kick a field goal. They go for it, and Scatterboo couldn't hang on to that pass. That was, once again, a tough one to catch. I wrote down that Deonte Banks had a nice tackle for loss on Javonte Williams. It was a solo tackle, but then I didn't see him as a tackle for loss in the box score, so I could have been wrong. Maybe I had the wrong player. Oh, no, I'm an idiot. So, no, it was Deonte Banks had 2 tackles for loss in this game, so I looked at something else before. So, yeah, it probably was Deonte Banks. So, yeah, he did have 2 tackles for loss in this game, Deonte Banks. That's great. I'll take it. He may not get his head turned around ever, but I will take 2 tackles for loss in the game. There was a Kevontae Turpin first down. It was a very easy first down where they blitzed a bunch of guys. The corners were dropping in depth a lot, and it was just a quick out to Kevontae Turpin, who picked it up, ran out of bounds. But anyway, Bobby Okereke had roughing the passer anyway, so even if Kevontae Turpin had dropped that or something, it would not have mattered. Another dumb penalty for the Giants. Drew Phillips had a pass interference on George Pickens. Javonte Williams had a touchdown. Tyler Nubin and Deonte Banks had a chance to tackle him. They never did. Brian Burns had that sick tackle for loss on Javonte Williams. It was like a swing pass to the left, and Brian Burns, it felt like, came out of nowhere and just leveled him. And Javonte is a pretty big dude, I'm pretty sure, so that was, that's impressive. The Giants had a moment where they tried to double team CeeDee Lamb in this game. It was Deonte Banks and Bobby Okereke on him, but he still caught it on 3rd down, so that was frustrating. You try to take out their best player. Maybe not the best guys to use. I wouldn't put Deontay Banks and Bobby Okereke on their best receiver, but still, it's a double team nonetheless, and, CeeDee Lamb still got it. Then Lamb had that big catch on the crosser on the left side of the field. He had two guys on him again. It was Newbin and Drew Phillips. Roy Robertson-Harris had another roughing the passer, which that just happened way too much in this game, obviously. Adebo lit up a short third down to George Pickens on a slant, which I thought was pretty good defense. It was well placed, so you have to respect, obviously, George Pickens' ability to go deep, and when he runs a slant, it's tough to adjust your hips. I get that. Miles Sanders had the untouched touchdown, made it 27-23 Dallas. This was a big turning point in this game. So Russell Wilson had the third down and pretty short, I think. I think it was like a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 maybe. They had Malik Neighbors open on a slant, like wide open. And I think, honestly, half the people watching this video could have made this throw, but Russell threw behind Malik Neighbors, which he could have caught, but it's mainly on Russ. I'd put 95% of the blame on Russ there. So he throws behind him on a slant. Neighbors drops it, but on the very next play, Wan'Dale Robinson on 4th down has that huge touchdown for 32 yards, which once again was Trayvon Diggs' responsibility. It was a cover 3. He didn't drop back far enough. I don't know what he was doing. On the next Dallas drive, there was a big pass breakup on 3rd down. It was Drew Phillips against Jalen Tolbert. It made it 4th and 4. Then Tolbert has a catch on Phillips, so he gets his revenge, but it was good defense, but there was also defensive holding anyway, so even if that was knocked incomplete, didn't matter. The Giants, again, with another penalty. George Pickens had the little comeback route to the pylon, made it a 34-30 lead for the Dallas Cowboys. I thought it was pretty good defense by Adebo once again, but just better offense, like perfect timing and just, I don't know, George Pickens made a nice catch. It is what it is. The Giants had under a minute left to go down, and wow, just got a tweet that Joe Burrow could be out until at least December with a toe injury, which is supposed to require surgery. Wow, that really sucks. I mean, the Bengals, I know the Giants have terrible luck, but the Bengals just always tend to not be healthy. It really sucks for them. Anyway, the Giants on their ensuing drive, Tracy has a good return. There was the big Malik Neighbors touchdown. He does the night-night Curry celebration. We're thinking the game might be over. Giants go up by 3. And I have to say, we shouldn't take extra points for granted at this point. I will say shout out Graham Gano for making a big extra point in that situation. So Dallas had the ball, but all 3 of their timeouts left. There was 19 seconds to get into field goal range. Dexter Lawrence nearly picked off Dak Prescott. I think it was Kayvon Thibodeau got pressure, hit Dak's arm. It kind of went through the hands of Dexter Lawrence, so that sucked. That could have sealed the game right there. And of course, for some odd reason, Shane Bowen's playing super far off these guys. And this isn't like they have some ass kicker on the Cowboys. They have the best kicker in football. I'm not afraid to say that about Aubrey at this point. Aubrey's a guy I know a lot about. I made a whole video about him last year. His story's incredible. The guy is tremendous, especially kicking indoors. Him kicking from anywhere within 68 yards, you're probably thinking it's going in. So you can't play too far off. Of course they do. They leave the whole middle of the field open, and not Terrence Ferguson, Jake Ferguson runs this deep curl, and he's just wide open, just sitting there, and the Giants defense can't get there in time, and he gets over midfield. I think they ran one more, it was a draw to Javonte Williams on the left side to maybe what's his name, Aubrey prefers kicking from the left hash mark. I'm sure that had something to do with it. And of course, from 64 yards, Brandon Aubrey makes the field goal from, he had room to spare on that one. It wasn't like he barely made it. The guy is tremendous. The Giants actually won the toss in overtime. They elected to kick. Now, I forget if they changed the overtime rules. I should know this, but I forget now. So I have to go back and look and educate myself on that. But when they elected to kick, I was like, what the hell's going on here? Because obviously in the past, everybody would receive. There was that one time, I remember this vividly, in 2015 when Bill Belichick, for some odd reason, this is back before the first overtime rules even happened, so it was just first score wins, but it was during the Ryan Fitzpatrick Jets days. It was at MetLife, and Bill Belichick was trying to be smart and elected to kick first. And of course, the Jets came down. I think Eric Decker had a game-winning touchdown. It was you don't want to question Bill Belichick too often, especially back then. But it was what the hell is he doing? So that costed them the game. So anyway, the Giants kick it first. They made an announcement that the center for the Cowboys, Cooper Beebe, was ruled out of the game. I forget what the injury was. But then a few plays later, of course, Dallas had a fumbled snap exchange. Dallas lost 2 yards. Then Drew Phillips, what we thought was a pass breakup, up might have been just a drop pass. It was like a comeback route on the top of the screen, right side of the field. I think it would have been a first down. It would have been very close at least. They probably would have went for it if he was like a yard short anyway. But we thought it may have gotten tipped, but after replay, I think Jalen Tolbert just flat out dropped that ball. So I don't know what happened there, but a good break there for the Giants. Then the Giants get it back after a punt, and Russell Wilson, this was the first thing that was like, just went in the wrong way. Not the first thing, but like when this happened, it was like, oh, that is such a Giants thing to happen. Like, of course, you just saw the 64-yard field goal for Dallas go through. That was such a Giants thing. But then this happens, where Russell Wilson and his big-ass hands, I don't know how this happened, he held onto the ball for too long, threw it backwards, which, of course, was a result in a fumble. And luckily, the Giants were like, alert enough to hop on that and not have a Dallas guy just pick it up and run it in for a game-winning touchdown. The ball, I think, went out of bounds, so what should have been like a 3rd and 3 went to a 3rd and 17, so that drive was basically cooked. They tried going deep to Wan'Dale Robinson, and Robinson, I think, just stopped running his route. He ran like one of those routes where he ran to the middle of the field and ran a corner route. I forget the name of it. Maybe a 7 route, you want to call it that, whatever. But Wan'Dale just stopped running. I think he made a gesture that he couldn't see the ball or something. I don't know. So that was a whole miscommunication. But there were 2 guys on him anyway, so I don't think Wan'Dale was even catching that ball. But the fact that he kind of gave up on it was pretty shitty. The Giants punt. Dallas gets the ball at the 38, their own 38. There was a big sack by Elijah Garcia, once again, of all people. George Pickens had the offensive pass interference, which once again had saved Paulson Adebo's ass because he missed the tackle. Then there was a 2nd and 29 where Javonte Williams, who I thought was complete dust, but he actually looked kind of good for the 2nd week in a row, but he broke off a 20-yard run. Abdul Carter couldn't bring him down. Bobby Okereke couldn't bring him down. Both of those guys had a chance, and he goes for 20 yards. But anyway, Drew Phillips wrapped up Jalen Tolbert to make it a 4th and 5. I think that was a game-saving tackle at the time. So if the Giants had gone on to win the game or at least tie, I think that was like the game-saving play right there, Drew Phillips. It wasn't, I don't know if it was a comeback route or if he just ran like a curl, but it was one of those where Tolbert came back to the ball. It was basically just one-on-one in the flat. So if he didn't make this tackle, he's picking up a first down for sure. And a lot of times you'll see the receiver catch the ball and duck under a tackle and keep going. But luckily, Drew Phillips, who has been a good tackler throughout his NFL career so far, he made a massive tackle in that situation. So shout out to Drew Phillips for that. Gunnar Olszewski, he had a good punt return on the ensuing Giants drive. Then, of course, there was the Russell Wilson interception, which that was another, like, Russell Wilson, great game overall, but man, like the fumble he had, which lost them a bunch of yards and basically cooked that first offensive drive in overtime. And then this dumb interception that didn't have to happen. It was a 2nd and 14 on the Giants' 30-yard line, and he just basically threw it up for grabs. I'm not sure if him and Malik Neighbors were on a different page or what, but Donovan Wilson was playing under it like a center fielder. Malik Neighbors almost knocked it away. They showed the replay, and I thought Neighbors, if he was a defensive back, he played it perfectly, just attacked the ball, but Donovan Wilson's strong hands held on to it. Cowboys get the interception. So they take over on their own 30. First play was George Pickens for 27 yards on a deep crosser against Paulson Adebo. And that pretty much was all she wrote, because that got Dallas down to the Giants' 43-yard line, which at that point, with just over a minute to go, you're in Brandon Aubrey's range. I think 43-yard line would mean that's a 60-yard field goal, I'm pretty sure. I think you add 17 or something, right? So, yeah, they're in his range. So at that point, you pretty much know it's over. Dak had that big run for 14 yards on a 2nd and 9 where he was kind of playing with fire because he almost got sacked and he stepped up and ran for a first down. So that was pretty much it right there. Brandon Aubrey from 46 yards, which for him is a freaking layup, and Dallas goes on to win 40-37. Definitely a depressing one. Like, you hate to see a loss like that. I mean, I guess it's better than last week, because last week they showed no life and you pretty much knew by halftime that game was over. But in this game, we had 5 lead changes in the fourth quarter. This was the first Giants 400-plus yard passing game for a quarterback since Daniel Jones back in that game in 2021 at the Saints. The one time everybody was healthy, you had John Ross playing, Galladay, Kyle Rudolph, Saquon had a big catch in that game for a touchdown, and the Giants have still not won a game at Dallas since 2016, Terrence Williams, the Victor Cruz go-ahead touchdown game. So it's been a very long time. And I did see that Schefter tweet on yesterday, right? Yeah, I think yesterday around like 4 or 5 o'clock, like weird timing there, but the Giants said they're giving Russell Wilson like a long leash or something. I forget what the exact wording on that tweet was. I'll go look real quick. Point is, though, it's kind of weird the way they just put that tweet out there. Of course, Schefter has a lot of tweets from today, so I have to go back and find this. So he tweeted yesterday at 6:04 on Saturday that there is, quote, no sense of urgency in the New York Giants organization to bench Russell Wilson and start rookie Jackson Dart. So I think some of us speculated that if Russell Wilson came out here and played like crap once again, maybe we see Jackson Dart in week 3 against the Kansas City Chiefs. But honestly, I know Russ had some awful moments in overtime, but you can't blame this game on him. Like, the guy absolutely played well enough to win. It's a team game. Unfortunately, they lost. And now the Giants have a primetime game, their home opener against the Kansas City Chiefs, who were 0-2. I cannot remember the last time that team ever went 0-3. So am I expecting to win next week? No, I'm not. Like, it's going to be a Sunday nighter, 8:20 at MetLife. I mean, I guess crazier things have happened, but it's just very hard for me to see a Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid team go 0-3. They are missing a lot of receivers. Their wide receiver one at this point is Marquise Brown or even Tyquan Thornton. Like, they're down a lot of guys in their receiving core. Of course, Travis Kelce had a big game-losing play today. But that team, they still have a good defense. They're still very well coached with Andy Reid and, of course, Spagnuolo, so we know all about that. I'm not expecting an easy game there. And right now, as I said, the Giants are a +6 at home, so I don't think it'll be easy. That's all I'm saying. It's possible. It's the NFL. I mean, anyone can win. And the funny part is, when this Giants game ended, a lot of us, I'm sure myself included, we just tune our full attention to NFL Red Zone. And I feel like within 5 minutes of the Giants game ending, we saw a Daniel Jones touchdown, quarterback sneak, but a Daniel Jones touchdown, and then a Saquon Barkley touchdown right after that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm like, what's next? Evan Engram on the Broncos gets a touchdown? Like, that didn't happen ultimately, but I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how much salt can you rub in the wound here? And somehow Daniel Jones is 2-0. I know it's a team sport, and the Colts are a good team overall, good roster. Jonathan Taylor had a monster game today, but to see him 2-0, it's like, holy crap. Like, he actually looks kind of good. I don't think Daniel Jones is good. I've said for years that I don't think he's good at football. But so far he is 2-0 and his numbers are good. I know this is fantasy football, but I saw a tweet that he's like the quarterback 2 in fantasy football. The only quarterback with more fantasy points through 2 weeks than Daniel Jones is Lamar Jackson. It's like, are you kidding me, of all things? So a lot of that was against the Miami Dolphins. Their defense is awful. So maybe this whole Daniel Jones thing is just not going to happen. But I thought for sure, I was confident that Jones would struggle a lot against Denver today, but he threw for 316 yards and a touchdown, no turnovers. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. But 2 tough games on the road on deck for the Colts, so we'll see if Daniel Jones is actually like turning his career around or if this is just a lucky 2 weeks. I mean, we've seen Jones do this before, so I don't want to be fooled. But I will say, the 17 looks better on him. I don't know why he didn't do it with the Giants, but 17 looks better. Anyway, yeah, don't want to talk about that guy anymore, but disappointing loss. Like, I really, for a bit there, like after the Malik Neighbors touchdown and the night celebration, I'm thinking like, we're going to come on here and talk about a win, a lot of excitement, and the season is not over. Like, it's still technically not over yet, but when you go 0-2 as compared to 1-1, it is a much worse feeling. So I don't want to say the year's over yet, but you're playing the Chiefs next week, and I pretty much already said I doubt they win that game, but it has to be played. It has to be played. We'll see next Sunday night what they end up doing there. But all I'm saying is that's a tall task. That is a team that does not go 0-3. That's a coach who does not go 0-3. And the Giants, on the other hand, go 0-3 like it's their job every single year. So based on the trends and what's happened in the past, I'm not expecting a win, but we'll see how next Sunday plays out. Anyway, I think that's all I got. I just want to search the Giants on Twitter, see if I'm forgetting anything real quick. Overall, just too many penalties. I don't know what Shane Bowen does for this team. I also don't know what, like, if you fire Shane Bowen right now, who are you going to put at defensive coordinator? Like, they should have made that change after last season. I'm not sure why the leash on Shane Bowen was so long, but they kept him around for some reason. Like, there has to be better defensive coordinators out there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to look it up. I looked it up on Gemini, but you're giving me these names of guys that are already hired by teams. Like Brian Dable, did you really have to beef with Don Martindale? Like, was it worth it? Was it worth it looking back? Like, why couldn't they just get along? So, maybe Wink Martindale's at fault for that too, but I wish that whole thing worked out because I did like the Giants defense with Don Martindale. Of course, it had some shortcomings, but for the most part, it was a defense with an identity. You actually got a lot out of Bobby Okereke. And of course, the Giants in 2022 had a good defense with Martindale. So it sucks the way that turned out, and I just don't like what I see from Shane Bowen. And I still get flashbacks of the Shane Bowen Hard Knocks clip when Brian Dable goes to Joe Shane and starts showing Joe Shane the stats of the Titans defense, being like, hey, look at this. They're second against the run. Let's get this guy. It just... I'm sure there was more research done than that, but the way they played it out in the show was almost like awful. Like, how did you hire the guy based on that? Here's a tweet from Adam Schefter I just got here at 9:29. Brandon Aubrey became the first NFL player ever to convert a game-tying field goal with no time remaining in the fourth quarter and a game-winning field goal with no time remaining in overtime in the same game. Yeah, of course that's against the Giants, because why wouldn't it be? There was also the clip of James Hudson, like, just going ballistic on the sidelines because he got benched or something. Like, dude, you 4 penalties on one drive. You should be benched the rest of the game. Like, let's just be honest here. And I know it sucks. It really does suck to lose that game. But I will say, like, this is not elementary school. It's not field day. It's not one of those if you had fun, you won type of things. I always say it's a results-driven business. Wins and losses matter the most. But I will say, I had fun watching that game. I hate to admit it, I had fun watching that game, and I really can't say that about the Giants a lot in recent years. There hasn't been too many fun things to watch about this team, but that was actually a fun game. But anyway, it's good to see Russell Wilson, I guess, kind of snap out of it after what we saw against Washington last week. It's a much softer opponent. I'm sure next week's defense with the Chiefs will not be easy either, so we'll see how that plays out. But at least he went out there in a matchup that he should have exploited, and he did. So he did what he was supposed to do. I can't be mad at that. And yeah, so entertaining loss for sure, but a loss is a loss, results-driven business. And here's another stat here from NFL and CBS. Most consecutive wins by a starting quarterback versus an opponent since 1980. 2017 to present, Dak Prescott versus the Giants. You had 2003 to 2010 Tom Brady versus the Bills, 1987 to 1998 Steve Young versus the Rams. So Dak Prescott, of all people, who I've always respected. I'm not one of those Giants fans who's like, oh, Dak sucks. Like, no, I think Dak has always been a near top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's Tom Brady or Steve Young. So the fact that he owns the Giants franchise that much is pretty embarrassing. And when you're playing with who could be the worst defensive coordinator in football, it makes things a lot more difficult. So yeah, I hope that gets fixed somehow, but I don't expect Shane Bowen to do a whole 180 after 1 week. I just think it is what it is at this point. So no Jackson Dart just yet. I'm trying to think, what did I say last time? I know last time I said he would make his first start against the Packers in week 11. I don't know if it'll take that long, but it still kind of makes sense. Like, if they do look horrible these next 2 games, there is a window where they could start him at New Orleans, which is a pretty soft landing spot. But then you play Sunday, then you have a quick turnaround and play Thursday right after that. So maybe they make the move after week 6 where they probably end up losing to Philly. But I don't know. We're going to see how it plays out. I'll stick with my prediction. I still say Jackson Dart makes his first start week 11. I do think they ultimately want to give Russell Wilson a fair shot and a fair amount of time. And the way he played today, once again, it was not the reason they lost. Of course, in overtime, he made 2 very critical mistakes. But in regulation, when you have 37 regulation points, that should be enough to win the game. So I can't say I blame Russell Wilson entirely for that. Anyway, that'll do it. Hope you all enjoyed. At least, hopefully you had fun watching the game, because as I said, most fun I've had watching the Giants in a while. Hopefully next week we come on here reacting to a win, because at 0-3 your season's basically over, so let's hope we don't get there yet. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time.